My father was a forest ranger for 31 years. He retired in 2004. He spent those 31 years in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest in southwestern Washington, which is about 1.5 million acres of old growth and second growth and volcanic rock and river drainage and country that most people drive through on the way to Mount Rainier and do not stop in. He knew that forest the way most people know their own neighborhood. Better. Probably. Because he paid attention to it in a way that most people do not pay attention to their neighborhoods. He kept logs, 31 years of field logs, written in the same style, the same handwriting, dated and indexed, wildlife observations, trail conditions, weather, unusual incidents. 31 years of unusual incidents. He gave me the logs when he was diagnosed. Pancreatic cancer, 2019. He was 72 years old. He handed me a box, and he said, "Read these before I go, because there are things in here I want you to understand, and I am not sure I can explain them in conversation anymore." He died 7 months later. I read the logs, and I understood what he meant. My name is Kevin Adler. I am 47 years old. I live in Vancouver, Washington. And what I am about to read to you is not my story. It is my father's, in his own words, from 31 years of field logs. His name was James Adler. He started as a seasonal ranger in 1973 and went permanent in 1975 and stayed in the Gifford Pinchot his entire career because he was offered transfers twice and turned them down both times. He writes about this in an early log, 1977, in a passage that is not really a field observation, but that I think he needed to write down somewhere. He writes, "Halverson asked me again about the transfer to Olympic. I told him no again. He thinks I am being stubborn. He is wrong. I am being specific. There is a difference. I know this forest. I do not want to start over knowing another one. There are things here I am still figuring out. I expect there will always be things here I am still figuring out. That is the point." He was right about that. He spent 31 years figuring things out. And the thing he spent the most time on, the thing that shows up in the logs with more frequency and more careful documentation than anything else, is the thing I am going to tell you about now. He first noted it in 1978. Just a line in a September log. He writes, "Found unusual tracks on the north side of Lewis River drainage, above the 3,000-foot contour. Bipedal. Large. Not bare. Photographed. Will follow up." He followed up for 26 years. The Gifford Pinchot is not a wilderness area. I want to explain this because it matters. It is a national forest, which means it is managed for multiple uses: timber, recreation, watershed protection, wildlife. It has roads in it. It has campgrounds. It has a fair amount of human traffic in the summer months. It is not the kind of country where you would expect to find something that has been successfully avoiding people for a very long time. But it is also, in its interior, in the drainages and the old growth pockets and the areas that the roads do not reach, large enough and complicated enough and dark enough at the lower elevations where the canopy closes over that something could be in it, if it wanted to be in it, and not be found. My father understood this. He writes about it in a 1981 log after 3 years of intermittent documentation. He writes, "People think of this forest as accessible. It is accessible at its edges, in its interior, on the north-facing slopes below the volcanic ridges, in the river drainages above the falls. It is not accessible. I have been in this forest for 8 years, and there are drainages I have not fully surveyed. There are slopes I have not walked. This is a large place. People underestimate how large it is because they can drive across it in an hour. You cannot walk across it in a week. Not through the interior. Not through the real interior. He was writing about tracks in that entry. He had found a new set, in a drainage he had not visited before. He had measured them. He had photographed them. He had noted the elevation, the substrate, the stride length, the toe spread. He had not reported them. I want to address this because I think it matters. My father was a federal employee. He had a reporting obligation. Unusual wildlife observations were supposed to go into the official record. He did not report these. He writes, in a 1983 log, after 5 years of documentation, about why. He writes, I have thought carefully about whether to report what I've been finding. I have decided not to. My reasons are as follows. 1. I cannot explain what I am finding in terms that would be received as credible, and a ranger who files incredible reports does not stay a ranger for long. 2. I believe that whatever is making these tracks has been in this forest for a very long time, and has been in this forest without anyone knowing it is here. And that state of affairs has served it well, and I do not see what purpose I would serve by ending it. 3. I am not sure that what I am doing constitutes a wildlife observation in the formal sense. I am not sure I know what it constitutes, but I know that it is mine, in a way that official records are not, and I am not ready to give it up. He kept it for 26 more years. The first clear sighting was in 1986. He had been in the forest for 13 years. He had been documenting the tracks for 8. He was doing a trail assessment on a section of the Lewis River Trail, which runs along the North Fork of the Lewis River, in the southern part of the forest. It was early morning, June. The light was still low and flat, the kind of light that makes the forest look like a photograph of itself. He came around a bend in the trail and stopped. On a gravel bar in the river, about 40 meters away, something was standing in the water. He writes, I will document this the way I document everything. Subject was bipedal, approximately 7 to 8 feet in height, dark coloration, consistent with previous track evidence in terms of build and proportion. Subject was facing upstream, appeared to be fishing, or something functionally similar to fishing. Subject had its back to me. I stood still for approximately 3 minutes before subject turned. When it turned, it looked at him. He writes, direct eye contact, approximately 40 meters. Duration approximately 90 seconds. Subject made no threatening gesture. Subject made no sound. Subject did not flee. After approximately 90 seconds, subject walked to the far bank, entered the tree line, and was gone. I stood on the trail for some time afterward. I then sat down on a rock and wrote these notes. My hands were steady. I find that interesting. I expected them to shake. They did not. His hands did not shake. He writes, below the official documentation, in smaller letters that feel more personal. I have been waiting for this for 8 years. I think part of me knew it would happen eventually. The tracks were too consistent, too regular, too deliberate in their distribution across the landscape. Something that leaves tracks like that is not hiding. It is moving through a territory it considers its own, without concern for who else is in that territory. That is the behavior of something that has been somewhere long enough to feel entitled to it. I do not begrudge it the entitlement. This is its forest too, maybe more than mine. Over the following 18 years, until his retirement, my father had 11 confirmed sightings. I say confirmed because he was careful about the word. He did not count distance observations that could have been other explanations. He did not count sounds or tracks or disturbances. He counted only the times he saw clearly, at close enough range, in good enough light, that there was no other reasonable explanation. 11 times in 18 years. He documented each one with the same precision. Date, time, location, duration, behavior observed, weather conditions, light conditions, distance. The documentation is meticulous. What is less meticulous? What feels more like a man thinking out loud than a ranger filing a report? Are the passages he wrote alongside the official documentation. The observations about what he thought it meant. I want to read you some of those. After the third sighting, 1989. It moves through this forest differently than anything else I observe moves through it. Not faster. Not more carefully. Differently. With a quality I can only describe as ownership. The way a person walks through their own house in the dark, without turning on lights, because they know where everything is. This forest, in the interior, is its house. I am a visitor. I have been a visitor for 16 years, and I think I am only now beginning to understand what that means. After the fifth sighting, 1993, I saw it watching me today before it let me see it. I am certain of this. I came into the clearing, and it was already there, in the shadow of the firs, and it waited until I had settled, until I had taken out my notebook and begun writing, and then it stepped out where I could see it. It wanted me to see it. I have been thinking about why. The best answer I have is reciprocity. I've been watching it for 15 years. It has been watching me for 15 years. At some point, watching from a distance is no longer adequate. At some point, you step out from the trees. After the seventh sighting, 1998, 25 years in this forest. 15 years of this particular documentation project. I am aware that I have spent a significant portion of my professional life in the quiet company of something that most of my colleagues would say does not exist. I find that I'm not troubled by the irony of this. I am more troubled by the thought of retiring and leaving this forest, and leaving what is in it, without passing the knowledge on to someone. I have not yet figured out how to do that. I am not sure it can be done through official channels. I am working on the problem. He worked on the problem for 6 more years. And then he retired. And then he waited 15 years. And then he gave me the box. I've been in the Gifford Pinchot 4 times since he died. I am not a forest person, in the way my father was a forest person. I am an accountant. I live in Vancouver. I spend my days in an office, looking at numbers, which is a world that is almost entirely the opposite of the world my father spent his life in. But I have been in the Gifford Pinchot 4 times, walking the trails he documented, standing in the clearings he wrote about, looking at the rivers. The 3rd time, I went to the Lewis River Trail, to the bend in the trail where he had his first sighting in 1986. I stood there for a long time. The gravel bar was there. The river was there. The tree line on the far bank was exactly as he had described it. I did not see anything. I did not expect to see anything. I am an accountant. I do not have 31 years in that forest. I have not been paying that quality of attention for that length of time. Whatever is in those trees, if it is still there, has no reason to step out for me. But I stood there anyway, for about an hour. And then I said, out loud, to the river and the tree line, and whatever might have been in the tree line, he knew you were here. He spent 31 years knowing you were here. He wanted me to know too. I paused, and then I said, I know. And I turned around, and I walked back down the trail, and I drove home to Vancouver, and I sat at my kitchen table, and I read the logs again. All of them. Start to finish. The way you read something when you want to feel close to the person who wrote it. The way you read something when the person who wrote it is gone, and the words are what is left. My father was not a sentimental man. He was precise. He was patient. He was the kind of person who showed up and did the work and did not require recognition for doing it. He spent 31 years in a forest that most people drive through without stopping. He spent those 31 years paying the kind of attention that most people do not pay to anything. And in paying that attention, he found something, not in the dramatic way, not in the way of a discovery or a revelation, in the slow way, the way things are found when you are patient enough and present enough and honest enough to see what is actually in front of you, rather than what you expect to be there. He found it, and he kept it, in 31 years of field logs, in a box he gave me before he died, because he wanted me to understand, and he did not know how to explain it in conversation anymore. I understand. Dad. I think I understand. There are things in that forest that have been in that forest for a very long time. Longer than the Forest Service. Longer than the roads. Longer than any of the names we have put on the maps. They were there before the maps. They will be there after. And for 31 years, a forest ranger named James Adler walked into their country every day and paid attention and did not flinch and did not report and did not make it into something it was not. He just watched, and occasionally, in the flat light of early morning, beside a river, or at the edge of a clearing, or on a slope above a drainage he had no name for, it watched back. That is the whole of it. That is everything he left me, and it is more than enough.